News about Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he gave a televised address this morning saying that all civilians, doctors and wounded, and the severely wounded as well, have left the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol and have been saved successfully. But according to Russia's defense ministry, a total of 2,439 soldiers from Azovstal have actually surrendered. Now, Zelensky also said in that address that all Ukrainian defenders taken from Azovstal to Russian-controlled cities must return home as part of a prisoner exchange. Now, unfortunately, Zelensky also said that a large number of people have unfortunately died, mainly Ukrainian pilots who tried to fly in and save those trapped from Azovstal. And also here on the ground, Logan, Ukraine seems to be getting hit very hard today. There was large reports of explosions being heard over Kyiv this morning. Also, Kharkiv, Rivne, Kherson, Sumy and Mykolaiv have all been hit today. Now, in Kyiv, where I am now, there was absolutely no word of what direction that explosion came from or whether it was ingoing or outgoing, but there has been air raid sirens going off non-stop here today. And in other news, Russia has turned off Finland's gas supply, as you mentioned in that intro, following Helsinki's decision to join NATO in that latest escalation of energy payment disputes with the West. Now, the gas firm Gazprom said it had completely halted its exports to Finland at 4 a.m. today, with the Finnish state-owned gas wholesaler Gazprom confirming it as well. Now, Russia has continued to supply gas to other Western countries, despite being hit really hard with those sanctions following the invasion in Ukraine. But it's interesting to see how they have now cut it off to Finland after their request to join NATO.
Well, Sarah, I'm looking at the graphic on our screen right now, day 87 of this war on Ukraine. I know you've been there since before day one, so stay safe and thank you for that reporting.
Thank you.
And joining us now to discuss is former acting director of national intelligence and former ambassador to Germany, Ric Grenell. So, Rick, great to see you. And first off, a U.S. official says the United States plans on keeping 100,000 troops in Europe. Is this a prudent decision?
I mean, look, the devil is going to be in the details. We need to figure out what's going on and where our troops are exactly. Are they being moved around? Are they rotational troops? I've been a big advocate for not having 50,000 troops in Germany alone, trying to move troops out of Germany, maybe put some in Poland. This was a big discussion. And maybe even bring some home or put them in other areas like the Pacific. But we shouldn't get trapped into just kind of having troops in the same old places when we have countries like Germany that get really relaxed about it. I mean, this is a country that has a budget surplus but still isn't paying their NATO obligations. And why would you when you have 50,000 American troops there protecting you? The American people are paying that bill in Germany. Germany has little incentive to actually abide by the NATO obligations. They made their commitment in 2014. They still haven't done it. There's a big debate going on in Germany as to whether or not the 16 years of Chancellor Merkel really caused this war in Ukraine, because clearly the German government under Chancellor Merkel and the Senate Democrats in Washington, D.C. together dropped the sanctions on the Russian pipeline. And if you remember, Logan, what they said is they needed to drop these Trump sanctions because they didn't want to anger Putin. That was their excuse. They thought that sanctions would anger Putin. We haven't had enough discussion on just how wrong they were. Every Senate Democrat that voted to drop the sanctions is partly responsible for the war in Ukraine. And we need to show how weakness in the United States is causing our allies and others to go without having the ability to confront our enemies. And this is a problem developing not just with Russia, but certainly we've seen it with China as well.
And going back to that dynamic with Germany, do you think that is what led to this in terms of somewhat of appeasement from the West, in the sense that Putin thought he could kind of do whatever he wanted and was dealing with weaker negotiators on the other side?
Look, I would point everybody to a speech that Ted Cruz gave on the floor this week. It was really phenomenal, and it was really pulling the pieces together. I've written on this a couple of times. I know Senator Cruz has been out front on this. But I think the double hit of the Biden administration, showing the world their weakness in Afghanistan, really falling down and failing to have a policy that showed strength. Everything about that was weakness. Joe Biden was proud that he got 90% of the Americans out. That's a disaster. That message is loud and clear that you left 10% of the people behind. So when you combine that with dropping the sanctions on the Russian pipeline, what else does Putin read? He's seeing the same videos of us, of Joe Biden bumbling and stumbling. He's watching those same videos, and you have to ask yourself, why did Putin go on the offense when Barack Obama was president and Joe Biden was vice president? And then again, he went on the offense when Joe Biden was president. Why didn't he do that when Donald Trump was president? Ask yourself that. It's pretty obvious. I looked at Chancellor Merkel in the eye and told her that Russia is going to use their leverage on energy against you. And she looked me in the eye and said, no, we can control that. She was wrong. The Senate Democrats were wrong. Donald Trump was right.
Now, Rick, Russia says it plans to bulk up its military presence on its western borders with those NATO countries. So are we headed toward a larger conflict? Do you think that Russia could partner with some other, malign actors like China and Iran? Or do you think that Russia at this point has isolated themselves so much that they would have to go at that alone?
I think the answer is a little bit of both. I think they've isolated themselves tremendously. I think China really cares about money and economics, and they've seen the world come together to do sanctions against Russia, and they don't want that to happen to their economy. Their economy is fragile. So that lesson was really a good one when we all united to put sanctions on Russia. But remember, the Senate Democrats did the opposite. We had sanctions on this pipeline. We had sanctions on Russia. They believed that the sanctions were too tough. Merkel believed they were too tough. So you have to evaluate the strategic blunder of the Senate Democrats and why they did that and why Joe Biden pushed for this. And you also, I don't think it's wrong to show that their weakness created this war in Ukraine. We now are giving billions of dollars to Ukraine in aid and in military equipment. But the fact is that Donald Trump wanted to sell Ukraine these arms a long time ago. Why weren't we selling arms to Ukraine a long time ago? You ask yourself that. Well, once again, the Senate Democrats were saying that that would be a strategic blunder because it's somehow going to incite a war. What we now know is what incited a war was when they dropped the sanctions and they pretended somehow that they were going to appease Putin and that he was going to return the favor of being nice. And that's just not what happens with Putin.
And real quick, Russia's cutting off gas lines to Finland. What do you think of that move by Putin?
Well, look, I think, this is the blunder of Europe, of over-relying on one form and one country for their energy. And they shouldn't be in the position where they can have this leverage against them. They need to diversify their energy sources, and this is a top priority. Right now, I'm against having Finland and Sweden join NATO. The current members of NATO are not paying their fair share. I did not hear from Sweden and Finland that they are immediately going to pay their 2% obligation. So immediately we'll be adding two countries that are not in the immediacy prepared to pay their 2%. What does that mean? American taxpayers are extending the security umbrella to two more countries in Europe. At some point, we have to concentrate on ourselves. You look at the infrastructure of Europe, and it's way better than the infrastructure in the United States because they don't have to worry about their security as much. There's an opera house on every corner practically in Germany. They have amazing roads. They get to spend money on their own country and infrastructure because we're paying the defense bill.
Well, few Americans know Europe better than Ric Grenell. Ambassador, thanks for your time.